Now I want to bring you a fireside chat. We're going to wrap up with a 15, 20-minute chat with one of the people who you've had his operation has been referenced several times today as we've talked about the way that technology has infused this industry, how it's very much become a West Coast phenomenon or a co-phenomenon in this industry. Now please welcome, in conversation with me for the next few minutes, Arwed Niestroj, who is the president and CEO of Mercedes-Benz R&D North America out of Silicon Valley. Oh, you got a bark too.
Right,
good. That's good. That's good approval. Takes a lot to get a bark. Yes.
Yeah.
You owe the dog a biscuit, by the way.
Without even saying anything, right? That's a great start.
That's good, yeah. So, Arwed, let me ask you real quickly at the very top here. Mercedes-Benz in Silicon Valley. What was the trigger, in your knowledge, of why the company, why Daimler put this important center there? We've heard a lot of discussion about it in a panel a couple of sessions ago, but anything particular that brought Mercedes and Daimler to Silicon Valley?
See, the interesting thing is that it actually happened 20 years ago. I mean,
you're one of the first to go in.
Imagine times when Google didn't even exist, so I think it was a pretty visionary...
There was such a time, by the way.
Yeah, there was such a time. It was a pretty visionary move, I think, a bold move those times. And I think those times it was clear that the whole infotainment activity will become much, much bigger. And we saw the internet rising those times. I mean, that's when first the internet became really big. So we started with a small group, 20 people, so more startup character than we are today. Today we are 240.
How big's the staff now in that office?
240.
Okay, you've grown a bit.
In the Sunnyvale office, yeah, doing lots of stuff, connected car, autonomous driving, many different things.
Yeah, I've been there a couple of times, and you've just launched a new facility there recently,
yes.
Dramatically expanded and improved. It's a fascinating slice of the future. Let me ask you about some of the specifics on that. We've heard about Android Auto and CarPlay a couple of times today. Boy, that was great guns, a year and a half ago when those two emerged about the same time. There's Apple and there's Android doing their announcements, and I mean, the screen was full of logos. Every car maker's logo was up there, and it was coming soon. It seems to be coming much more slowly than soon. From your point of view at Mercedes-Benz, how's it going?
Yeah,
CarPlay and Android.
Yeah, we've heard today from our friends here at Google Android that they are really looking into driver distraction. That's the big thing about how you design your infotainment system. And of course, we've been working on this for many, many years. So what we want to provide our customers is really the most beautiful and most powerful experience we can create. And that is one part of it. That's the Mercedes-Benz luxury aspiration we want to achieve. On the other hand, we have, of course, many customers, and of course, many young customers that do expect to have the user interface in the vehicle that they use on their smartphone. So we will introduce CarPlay starting December 1st, 2015, in a range of vehicles. So, for example, all our compact class vehicles, A-Class, B-Class, GLA, CLA, also bigger vehicles, CLS, starting in December 2015 this year. And
okay,
there
good
are more models to come.
The first car that I ever experienced CarPlay in was the new C-Class when it was introduced a year and a half, 2 years ago on the auto show floor. Now, notice how the cars that will first have it, by what Arwed just told us, not coming down from C-Class, coming up from the more affordable, accessible models in the line. It's a nice thing about digital technology is it can be propagated sooner in more affordable cars than something hardware-based, right?
And you should also look at the market. I mean, who does buy the smaller cars? Who does buy the luxury cars? Who is more used to the smartphone user interface that he uses? Who is rather enjoying the full luxury experience and who has more functions to set in his vehicle. That's the luxury vehicle, the high-end vehicle. Yeah,
put the first foot forward, but also put it in the right direction, toward the right audience. We heard a lot of that from Larry Rosen today about who's predisposed to use these technologies. I want to turn now to something we talked about a lot in this conference, which was about the potential future of fewer cars used more. This idea of higher utilization through somewhat helped by autonomy, somewhat helped by vehicle sharing and logistics services, but basically getting more use out of cars and maybe a little less direct personal ownership the way we know it. That seems to cut against the grain for a company like Mercedes-Benz. Don't you just simply want to sell the most number of cars regardless of how much they're used?
See, as times change, we see that we are really moving into being a mobility provider. Individual mobility is that what we actually provide to our customers. And as we see how this changes, how the ownership changes, we've started car sharing many, many years ago. So we are today with Car2Go program, we have the biggest car sharing fleet in the world already running now for more than 10
Car to
years.
go, yeah.
Yeah, car to go. And we also look into other mobility concepts. We actually bought Ride Scout. We are running a My Taxi app in Germany. So
You got a pilot in Palo Alto called Boost for getting kids around?
Yeah, we do youth transportation. So I think we heard today one of the startups here explaining how parents are challenged in moving the kids around. We've done more than 10,000 rides over the last 2 years, transporting kids from school to sports to whatever activities, all app-based, dynamic routing, and very, very good customer experience.
Can you give us a simple snapshot of how that works for the business? I mean, we're not at a business conference here. Does it work trading automotive sales, if that's really what we're saying, trading some degree of automotive sales for more logistics business? Does it work out? Is it as good a business to be in, or do you just have to go there because the market somehow demands it?
I think at the end, automobile manufacturers have to go there to some extent, but I think that the case is not yet fully clear what will be the dominating thing. And now in the recent years, we find so many, again, new concepts like Uber, like Lyft, which haven't been there the last years, that again, the whole situation has different aspects. More challenging on one side, maybe the other concept doesn't work out that well. I think it's still developing, but not doing this at all, I think, would be a risk to an automotive company.
It's not unlike some companies in media that were divided up very much between their cable operation and their internet operation, and now realize you've got to make a balance between cable TV and internet, which also brings that same customer TV through a different method. They don't all like it, but they realize that they have to have part of their business swing that way. And it's often not as much of a black and white shift as many pundits predict.
Yeah, and it's also a very good opportunity if you consider now kids being transported in Mercedes-Benz Sprinter vans as a part of Boost. I mean, they are used to this product, to this brand from the very young age.
Little brand affinity,
they
wherever it
trust,
comes
the
from.
parents trust the brand, so that's an asset you shouldn't underestimate.
Yeah. Now, one of the most interesting things, and I know all of us in this room have heard over and over the headlines over and continuously, that we are this dramatically urbanizing society. Everyone's rushing into the cities, is the conventional wisdom. We've all read these headlines and heard it. But at a couple of presentations that were very eye-opening to me at your Silicon Valley Center, some of your excellent demographers have said, no, basically America's growth is suburban. Not urban. And that's counterintuitive to a lot of what we hear. How does that inform what you guys are doing developing vehicles and the technology in them?
Yeah, see, well, what we're doing is we're doing these research activities. We're looking into society, what has changed. Of course, it's different in different markets. I mean, if we look at China, there's more than 1 million inhabitant cities whose names most of us couldn't even pronounce. So there is, of course, a very different situation. People are not living in the suburbs that much in China. But in the US, it's still a trend. As soon as people have families, the life changes and goes into this direction. And that makes, of course, the use of the vehicle very different. You spend much more time in the vehicle because you travel more. All the challenges that we have heard today and we've talked about do arise. The use of the vehicle is different. You start eating in the vehicle. You start making phone calls, maybe even working on the computer if you don't drive. So it makes a very big difference how the vehicle is used, and we want to adapt to this, of course.
Is technology, whether it's autonomous drive technology or whether it's infotainment or any of the blend between the two, is it a differentiator for a car maker in the future? Or are those technologies so common across car brands that they are a de-differentiator? I mean, CarPlay is the same in every car. That's the idea. It would seem to me that a lot of these autonomous driving technologies need to be about the same. I mean, ABS is the same in every car, from what I can tell. It's all very carefully calibrated the same, I guess partly under regulation, partly under safety expectations. Can you really differentiate with these technologies, or are they bringing car makers into more commonality?
I think we have to differentiate. Even ABS, maybe today it is the same, but it had differences. The detailed sensitiveness of sensors and so on does play a very important role in how your brake distance will be. So I think we definitely have to differentiate, and I think we will also in the autonomous driving world differentiate as systems move on, as the partially autonomous drive will move further in direction of fully autonomous. And if you look at other sectors that have been really disrupted, I think it's important to differentiate, because there is a certain risk, if you look at other disruptive histories already, where companies that have been differentiating are scaled back just to a hardware provider, and that's certainly not what we want.
Neil Beaudet of Automotive News, who was up here a couple of panels ago, has written several times about one of the things that, from what I can tell, keeps a lot of automotive executives like yourself up at night, which is a lot of bets have to be made right now. We've never seen more technology innovation in the auto industry, I think, ever, with massive R&D for many of them, and big bets on things that we just don't know how they're going to stick, how they'll price, what collection of them is going to work with consumers. How much sleep do you lose trying to make the right bets on technology and not go down a bunch of rabbit holes with things that aren't going to happen? I mean, you guys were a pioneer in brake-by-wire. It didn't work out. It was ahead of its time. That had to be an R&D rat hole.
I think you have to have the right balance. And we had this nice discussion here before about Silicon Valley culture and Detroit culture. You have to have the right balance. There's certainly things where you want to try, you want to give it a try, you want to reiterate and develop further and see if it really works out at the end. But the more you move to hardware, to the hardware-related side of it, things don't change that fast. I mean, if we look at some of the new automotive companies that did not exist 10 years ago, there still is no major threat in the global markets by them today, because hardware plays a very important role in this business, and it has played a very important role over the 125 years. So the challenge to really control and be the master of every aspect of an automobile is much more than whatever doing over-the-air updates or making a nice fancy screen. It's much more to this, and that's why I'm still sleeping well at night.
It's good to hear. Let me ask you about complexity in the business, which comes from this discussion of all these technologies that are coming, but also the ones you're installing now. And many Mercedes-Benz cars, certainly your flagship cars, are loaded with technology. Now, as you start to bring in CarPlay, you almost have a parallel fork in many areas, 2 navs, 2 communications, 2 entertainment forks within the interface, and so many things from night vision to head-up display to adaptive cruise to automatic start-stop. I can't tell how many people I know who have a car with automatic start-stop don't know what that button that turns it on or off means. It's an A with a curved arrow around it. It's cryptic to many people. How do we solve for complexity? I mean, you've put in as much technology as any company on the planet in your cars. What are you doing to digest it down so I'm not bewildered by options that I 80% of the time use no more than 20% of?
Yeah, that's one very, very important aspect that we have really worked on in the last weeks, very specifically. How do we control this complexity, and which design do we apply to make it simple to use, to move and transform the system, the machine, to something intelligent. So that's a very important aspect. And just to give you one example, today you find texts on your infotainment screen, texts what settings do you put in your vehicle at what situation, how do you steer the seats, how do you do the lighting, the automatic dimming of the interior, all these things.
Yeah.
And we will be introducing very soon a cinematic Hollywood quality experience on the screen with 3D rendering, animation, computed in the vehicle with the newest technology, hardware chips, developed together with companies we find in Silicon Valley, we do partner with, and that transfers the textual information, which is text and menu structures, to visual information of cinematic quality. So This is a very beautiful experience that you can have in the vehicle. So we want to upgrade the pure functional experience you have in the vehicle to an overall holistic experience which you really enjoy, which is beautiful and powerful.
I'll be honest, I've gotten lost in some of the settings for the dynamic contour seats. I mean, there are so many parameters to the high-end Mercedes-Benz seats with how they grip you and what moves where, and this bolster and that bolster and this. I think there are like 12 settings on some of your seats, and some of them are active on top of that. With that simple as that, and that's relatively low tech, that's electromechanical tech. How could something like that be made more digestible? Because I can't imagine most users master all those seat settings.
One more aspect we are strongly working on is to actually predict what the customer would like. So as we learn from the behavior in the vehicle, from the use in the vehicle, we can see patterns. We use machine learning, artificial intelligence to understand how customers behave, who is using the vehicle at what point in time, and then predict what the customer wants to have. Which seat setting does he like? Does he like the hot stone massage in a seat, or does he like the normal massage? Which radio station does he hear? So make it easier for customers, make the complex product of the vehicle, the complex environment that he could make use of, make it very simple and easy to digest and to operate.
Luxury is changing. It's the core value of Mercedes. You've got several, but the core value, I think, in every consumer's mind is, what's a Mercedes-Benz? It's a luxurious car. It's a prestige, luxurious car. But it seems like we're kind of taking all the dominoes and tossing them in the air in the industry right now in a rare moment. We're saying, hey, everyone gets a chance to get up, or maybe it's more like a musical chairs analogy. We're going to do musical chairs for the first time in decades. Everyone go around and pick a new brand position. Technology allows many car companies to maybe become something different than they were by putting new abilities in their car through what we've been talking about today. How do you make sure when the music stops and everyone sits down again, you're still in that seat that you want, which is so strongly in the luxury category, and not get usurped by anybody else using these technologies?
I think that's mainly experience. We know our customers pretty well, so we know what they like, and then there is a good bit of research. What does luxury mean? And we had this one statement here today saying luxury is what you don't have, what not everybody can have once you want to have it. So our idea, and that's very well represented in this F015 luxury in motion prototype that we made, is the future of luxury, to our understanding, will be time and space. And these are the two things that if you ask yourselves how much of your time did you spend today doing what, how much were you confined in the space you had, we think this is going to be how it will be in the future. And having an autonomously driving vehicle that is rather lounge style, is not just 4 seats or 5 seats, very close to one another, where you can move around, where you can use your time instead of watching the traffic and paying attention to the traffic. This is time and space, and this is luxury. And
that's the new luxury, is recapturing some of my time on the road and sitting in a space that organically I want to sit in, as opposed to now everybody's hasn't changed in a century. Everyone's facing this way. And mounted in front of controls that predicate a certain role that is sometimes, most of the time, a chore.
Yeah, that's what we could nicely show in the F015. That's what we could also show in our newest Tokyo show prototype that we showed a few weeks ago. So we think the environment in the vehicle will definitely change once it becomes fully autonomous, and this will be luxury.
Arwed, thank you for your time. We appreciate the chat.
Thanks.
Please thank Arwed Niestroj, head of Mercedes-Benz R&D North America. You got 2 barks this time.
All right, great. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Arwed. Thank you very much.